Welcome to the In Shape Fitness Show. I'm Coach Kim, and today's podcast is about core strength, a topic that is very, very popular in fitness. And so it's core strength and yard work or lawn care. I wanted to do this before it gets cooler, though there is still lawn care in the fall months. I live in New York City, as you know, but people in suburbia in most of the country in the United States transition away from cutting the lawn to raking leaves and doing other things related to the caretaking of the lawn through the colder months. However, I've just come back from being in Virginia for a big part of the summer, and I get to mow the lawn. I've talked about this before, and I write about it in my book, and I just think it's so fascinating to observe and to talk to people in suburbia, like my family and friends down in Virginia, about the lengths to which they go to pay other people to do this work for them. And they do this and so that they can go to the gym. That sort of was the start of my interest in the topic of lawn care. Again, I live in Manhattan. I don't have a lawn in New York City. So I don't get involved in any sort of this work in my regular life. But it's fascinating because if you look to the development of the idea of lawn care through the last couple hundreds of years, and then compare it to the obesity crisis in our country, to the morphology, the changes in our body types, the difficulty that we have to manage our weight, and then our consumer habits of purchasing exercise as an experience, and the effect that that's having in the way that we attack fitness and health as a whole. It's really kind of interesting. So I write about this in my book. I talk about it in terms of core work and core strength because so much of it fits into the mold of one of the 8 functional priorities that I identify in this book that hopefully will be published, or at least on its way to being published very soon. The type is called, or the functional priority is called PPHC. So I roll up everything related to core strength into this component called PPHC. And if you are standing up real tall or sitting right now, your thoughts probably go to your tummy, right? So zipping up your tummy muscles. Core strength is about stability in your trunk from the neck, your chest, all the way down to your butt. And the thing about PPHC, which stands for pushing, pulling, holding, and carrying. So everything that relates to what you would think of as upper body strength, and the bodybuilders and the sort of the gym culture around bulging biceps and defined pecs and deltoid muscles really have nothing to do with functional fitness. You know this. I'm sure you know this. I have seen bodybuilders unable to hold their arms up above their head, and that's just the body weight of their arms, but they don't have the functional strength to actually hold their body in a position because their muscles are trained independently. They don't have the sort of composite, the comprehensive level of functional work in their regular life, in their training lives, that allow for certain activities. And pushing, pulling, holding, and carrying are the sort of regular life things that we need to do, whether it's, and I'm going to get to the lawn care part in a second, because obviously pushing a lawnmower is one of the things that really energized my research into how we could kind of, roll up all of the activities that aren't really necessary in life in terms of mandated life. Now, if you are someone who cuts grass for a living, if you're a landscaper or perhaps a professional gardener or in some other manual labor industry, you may do activities. You may find yourself working your trunk and using your upper body and your arms for particular activities, a military, car mechanics, I'm trying to think of other things, moving companies, those kinds of things. You might be construction. You might be apt to be involved physically in some activities that relate to these issues that most working people have lost, which is that really simple concept of getting out of the bed and strutting from the position that you're in when you're lying down to the position that you spend most of the day involved in, which is seated on your butt, and the extent of your upper body movement is phalange pecking away, phalanges moving, in the typing of your keyboard or the typing on your device, or perhaps driving a steering, using a steering wheel to drive a car. And so we don't have mandated upper body work. I forgot parenting. Oh my gosh. I'm a mom of a 10-year-old, so I haven't been doing a lot of upper body, like picking up my kid for a while. I did give her a piggyback ride over the summer, but that's another part of regular life that involves upper body stuff. But pushing, pulling, holding, and carrying really encompasses all of that. So carrying groceries, carrying your bags, pushing a stroller, pushing a shopping cart, pulling, maybe pulling, what do you pull? Well, in lawn care, you might be pulling some, dragging some garbage that might be heavier, or holding, a box if you're moving something from place to place. These are things that are required in regular life. And guess what? They don't involve the strength, the cut of your biceps or your triceps or your shoulders or some chest, but that's part core, right? But your hands and your lower arms are not required to have significant strength, but what is important is that you have stability and strength through your trunk. And that is why I lump all those components, all those activities together into something called PPHC. And so the definition of it, the exercises that I do with clients that relate to PPHC types of function are the things that you could probably guess related to core work on the floor. Because, none of the exercises that I prescribe pretty much across the board have equipment related to them. We don't lift weights. We don't use a ton of equipment of any sort. But on the floor, when you're face down in prone position, things like push-ups and planks and all the other sort of ancillary kind of activities within those types of positions are the defined exercises that I prescribe to clients for PPHC work. And the cores, the reason that this is also effective is because the muscles in the core, when you create pressure against gravity in a horizontal position, four-legged creatures are kind of interesting in that they automatically have it because they're on their four legs. But when we lifted our hands up off the ground back in, millions and millions of years ago when evolution was happening, not that we could see it, but, when the great apes decided to stop using their hands for mobility, for motor movement, and stood up on two legs, then our center of gravity shifted, our vertical pressure shifted, and the way that we can rebuild back into our regular lives without exercise, like consumer-based exercise, is to spend time on the floor, in quadruped, in prone position, plank position, and conducting our movements in a way, moving the limbs in different ways, and there are hundreds of ways to do this, to maintain active, teamwork approached stimulation of the muscles that reside in and around your rib cage, your obliques, your front muscles, stomach muscles, your back muscles, and then, of course, your chest and your butt and hips. So those are the exercises. I want to talk about lawn care because I write about it in my book. And again, I'm just fascinated by anything that is an activity you can do in your life that is hard. It's not easy to mow the lawn unless you have a riding lawnmower. And even if you have a riding lawnmower, then there's still like the extra stuff that you've got to deal with, right? So you still have edging and other things. But old school, really old school, and then really, really old school was what I wanted to kind of discover as I was doing my research for this chapter. And what I got to experiment with and feel for myself was the sheer amount of exhaustion that you can achieve by mowing a lawn with a piece of equipment that doesn't have a motor. Because I did that, I've bought an antique lawnmower that I have at my family's house in Virginia. I'm, of course, my own, test case in many situations, and I proudly wear that mantle because I'm 50 years old. I turned 50 this summer, and I am the mom of a 10-year-old, and I am in the best shape of my life. Literally better than I was at 40, better than I was at 30, way stronger and more fit than I was in my 20s. And so I'm a really interesting test case, and to push an antique lawnmower, no motor, it's blades that are stretched across to an axis with two wheels that spins, and you push it, and then it gets dirty, and you have to kind of pull it and push it a lot because you have to make sure that the blades are being cleaned off. So it's a lot of back and forth and second time over sometimes, at least in Virginia where the grass is really thick and it's always kind of wet, so it's never really great for the blades, but I do get to do this work on my own because I really wanted to experience it. And it's the best endurance workout that I can think of. Over 30 minutes, I am more exhausted than I get when I run for about an hour and a half. It's incredible. So incredible that I love it. And that's one of the reasons why I spend as much time as I can in out of the city as I am in the city, but going back even farther than that. So let's just talk a little bit about the history of lawn care for a second, because I do find this really fascinating. So a couple hundred years ago, let's just, for the sake of not going completely crazy, talk about just the founding of the United States, or the colonies of the United States. Of course, people didn't have yards in those days. People might have a little bit of green space, but there were no such things as riding lawnmowers or motorized lawnmowers in the 18th century, 17th and 18th centuries. There were blades. Blacksmiths created blades. And then this beautiful piece of equipment called a scythe is like a long curved blade with a wooden handle. And also in Virginia, because I am kooky enough to do this investigative work when I am on vacation. In Yorktown, Virginia, where the Revolutionary War was fought, there are reenactors or actors that live as though it is the 18th century and show you how they did things. If you've been to like Colonial Williamsburg or Jamestown, or maybe some other, similar historical location, you might have seen something like this. Characters dress up as civilians from this period of time, and they show you how they cooked. and show you how they took care of their homes. They erect homes that looked like they were built in that time period. And there are farmers in Yorktown that showed me how they would clear fields with this long blade, with this scythe. And it's almost theatrical and performance art to watch, because the motion is really intense, but it's beautiful. It's this huge, swift, like wide-angled, circular stretch of the arm, stretch and extension of the arm out to the side. The whole core rotates with the body, and then the blade slices the tall grasses, the wheat, whatever it is, and then in that motion back and forth, that was how they cleared land. Not all the time, not once a week, but when they needed to, in order to either plant new crops or whatever, build a house, another structure, whatever. So the scythe was what, and smaller, handheld blades were essentially what was used to maintain, to manicure lawns, fields for a really long period of time. And then in the Industrial Revolution, the lawn, which started to become a thing a little bit more, it required more sophisticated equipment. But here's the rub. The more sophisticated equipment, which was still pretty hard to do. As I said before, the strip of blades on an axis with two wheels that you push and pull and push and pull over and over and over again. And I'm telling you, this little family place, this cottage in Virginia that I maintain over the summer is tiny, but it's really intense work, and it takes like 45 minutes to an hour for me to do the work. By the time that all came around, we were starting to become a country with nuclear sort of families where we had these little lawns. We were still doing a lot physically in our day-to-day lives, up in and including the period of time in, the 40s and 50s in this country. We were still moving around a ton every single day. There weren't, and I don't get into food a lot, as you know. I write about this as well. I purposely don't go there because of the depths of knowledge that are already out in terms of nutrition and food and the industry around weight loss and maintenance in health with respect to nutrition. But there weren't options as readily available to people as they are now. So back in that period of time, before the initial motorized lawn care industry sort of became a thing, humans in the United States, American adults, were able to conduct this activity. It was part of what they did in terms of maintaining their property. And we proceed through the history now into the period of time when I was a kid, and I remember the lawnmower that my parents had when I was a little girl, with that, pull of the lawnmower, the start of the motor. And I remember my mom's red face and the look on her face, especially when we had a fairly, not a big yard by any stretch of the imagination. It was still pretty small, but my mom mowing the lawn when I was a kid, it is etched in my memory, will forever be there. The sound of the engine starting and the intense level of exhaustion that my mom experienced by pushing this. Now it's heavier. So the little lawnmower, that antique lawnmower that I have without a motor, isn't quite as heavy as the mower that was moving faster and with more strength, but it was heavier. So she was pushing this, maybe 50-pound piece of equipment through the lawn. And that that was still pretty significant work. Well, then the upgrade to the motor that was motorized, self-motorized, but required the person to operate a brake. That was next. The period of time now I'm talking about is in like the 80s, I think, probably, maybe the 90s, early 90s. They were riding lawnmowers in the 80s because I remember the last house that I lived in with my parents in Virginia before I left for college. We had a riding lawnmower back then. But there were these, before the riding lawnmowers, and maybe in conjunction around the same time, there were these things that were still push mowers, but then it was pushing really itself, and you just had to operate the brake. So there was that differing component of it. But needless to say, we arrived to the 2000s and to the period of time that we're in right now, where people pay other people to do their lawns because it is a thing. They're too busy, first of all, or it's a thing because it's a status symbol. They don't want to do their own lawns. They don't, they don't believe they should have to. So they purchase that level of service in their lives, which is fine, and people can do that. But it is an interesting irony because these are the same people whose waistlines have been expanding, who are suffering physically from the effects of sedentary lives, because if you can afford to pay someone to do your lawn, you probably sit at a desk all day and need to go to the gym. As you get older, this is when your doctor is talking about, those cholesterol numbers are creeping up. Your blood pressure is creeping up. You really need to get out and do some exercise. I'm too busy, doctor. But you need to. But you don't, because you're so busy. You're at meetings, you're dealing with, homework at home or various other activities, and you're busy. And so you pay someone else to do your lawn, and then you're trying to get to the gym a couple times a week. And it's fascinating to me that we have these ironies in consumer health. In any case, I want to wrap it up because I don't like to belabor these points. I do think that we'll continue to see more of these ironies. My goal, my mission in life is to point them out, to use history as an interesting way to demonstrate how your body has everything you need, including the weight within your body parts, your head, your arms, your legs, to produce the resistance, to work with gravity, to maintain the range of motion that you need, and to build the endurance that you need to live your life without pain, without medical interventions, and without the gym. We just need to find the way to work the movement into the sedentary lives that we live, so that we can flip that equation and start taking better care of ourselves. So I'm Coach Kim from In Shape Fitness. I will do another workout podcast at the beginning of the week. And of course, I'll be back next week with another new episode of the In Shape Fitness Show. But get in touch with my team and me if you want. We can be found at bodybyInShape.com, or you can make a comment here at our website, or the iHeartRadio or Spreaker or iTunes, or however you're listening to this podcast. Definitely send me a note and find me on social media. I'll be around, and I will see you again soon. Have a great day.